Hi there, it's Ben Grabe here. We've got a slightly different O-Books Presents conversation with you today. The other week in London, I was very happy to catch up with our best-selling author, Judy Hall. Judy is a crystal expert, and I met her in the College of Psychic Studies in London to talk to her about crystals in general, and specifically her Crystal Prescriptions series, best-selling series she has with us. All about using crystals to heal various aspects of your life. Now, Judy's very big in the world of crystals. She's also been a past life therapist and karmic astrologer for over 40 years. She's internationally known. She's an author, a psychic, a healer, and a broadcaster and workshop leader. And her books have been translated into 15 languages. She's brilliant to hear talking about crystals, and I hope you enjoy the conversation and the questions I asked her.
Well, it's really difficult to say how I first became interested, because my earliest memories involved picking up crystals when I lived in the Lake District, and I'd go for a walk with my grandfather and there were sparkly things, so all the sparkly things came home with me. And that continued really. And by the time I was learning astrology in my 20s, early 20s, I had a huge collection of crystals. And I'd put them onto a chart. You know, I'd be working on a chart, and I didn't see clients face to face. I either did a written report or recorded it. And I'd be going, that crystal wants to go on there. And I didn't really stop to think why. But after a few years, quite a few years, I realised I got this huge collection. And I had no idea what most of them were. That was the start. You know, didn't know what the names were. I knew what they did when I wanted to put them on a chart or a person, because I'd be doing regressions and put them on people. But I wanted to be able to quickly look up, what's this crystal? What does it do? And to go, oh yeah, that's why I was using it. And there wasn't anything. And so I wrote the Crystal Bible. And it's really gone from there. I mean, since then I must have done, well, I've done at least probably 10 workshops a year and really explored all the different possibilities. And more, I was looking at what do we do, first of all, to expand consciousness, because that's what I'm really interested in. But also, how do we protect ourselves from technology and all these things that I was increasingly susceptible to. And then all the ancestral work came in, because people were carting along with them stuff from the past, their own past, their karmic past, but also their ancestral past. And really the expertise came from trying it out, experience. Yes, and I think it's really important to learn what suits you, because especially now, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, people's vibrations were much the same. Somebody coming into crystals, you could be sure that their physical frequency was pretty much the same. Now, people have been doing so many other things before they come to crystals. So somebody might have a very high vibration, and somebody else might have a more earthy vibration, and therefore the same crystal won't do for both. So what I say is, to start with, you go into a shop, and you know, I've got a few crystals here, and I would say pick up the one that instantly appeals. Have a feel of it. You might pick one up and go, ooh, don't like that. And that can be two things. So it's not quite as straightforward as it sounds. Oh, I don't like that. Might be that it's touching something you need to work on. But it wouldn't be the first place you went. So if you want to start out with something that's compatible, you feel it, or you look at the pictures. And it's one of the reasons that a lot of my books are so highly illustrated, is so you can get that sense of the colours right, the clarity. Let's look at these. This is labradorite, and when you first look at it, it looks pretty ordinary black. But I don't know whether you pick it up as I turn it, it suddenly flashes into life and light. Now this is an incredibly protective stone, but it'd be very easily overlooked if you only ever saw it as a dark piece. Something like this is pretty blingy. This is an celestial quartz. Now this is high vibration. It's not going to ground you. If you want something like this, the weight, the colour, everything tells you this is a grounding stone. And this actually is what I use to protect me from my computer and my computer from me. So first of all, you look at what your purpose is. What do you need it for? Then you look at what resonates with me. Then the next thing, you absolutely cannot just take it home and expect it to work. Well, it might, but you won't be very pleased with the results. So you take it home, you clean it. You can do it under the tap, but this is my favourite tool, which is a purpose-made crystal cleaner. That's all it needs. That crystal is now cleaned and recharged. And this one happens to be Eye of the Storm, or if you're in the States, it's Judy's Jasper. It's one that they were going to throw out until they sent it to me. And I said, oh, don't throw it away. As you see, it's around my neck. It really calms you and it gives you a very calm centre. Then you ask the crystal to work with you, and then you use it for your purpose. So it's the way to choose is to look at as many as possible, see what you're attracted to, and then take the trouble to cleanse the crystal. My personal life with crystals, I've just had to acquire a storage unit because they were taking over. I still use a lot. I live opposite a power station, and when I first went there, I had to have a house quickly, the only one available. As I drove up, I saw house, substation, and my heart hit my boots. But I had to have somewhere. And so that house is surrounded by large chunks of shungite and other crystals. And if you're out on the road, you really feel the electromagnetic vibrations. You can hear it. The whole place literally goes zoop. My car, when you go out to my car at night, is vibrating with the energy. So my gate has crystals. My house outside has crystals. And when you step in, it's perfectly cool, calm, nothing is vibrating, nothing's happening. As soon as you step back out into the road, you feel it. So that was one of the great gifts of crystals for me, because I couldn't have had that house without having those crystals available. And shungite's one of the ones that I use all the time. I've always got some about my person. If I'm coming to London, you know, I'm on the train, people are on their phones, they're on their computers, there's Wi-Fi. I am protected against it. So that's kind of a very basic thing for me to protect my energies. My Eye of the Storm is because coming into London, especially lately, there's been such a lot of hustle and bustle, and people are afraid as well. You know, there's been some pretty nasty things going on in London. And without something to screen my energies, I just get overwhelmed by it. Very small crystal, but it does the job. And the same when I'm working with people. Labradorite, which I wear around my neck for workshops, this screens my energy. And I also use them when I broke my finger. It's never totally recovered, but all the pain went away immediately. I sat for a week and held a little skull, a green quartz skull, who'd happened to have arrived one morning, popped into my hand and basically didn't leave it. And when they x-rayed my hand, the bone was shattered, and they thought that they were going to have to pin it and operate, and the bone had knitted back together. It had just done so with slightly too much enthusiasm because it left a stiff finger. But, you know, without that, I faced quite a lot of operations. So they're my go-to. If anything happens, I go to a crystal. If that doesn't work, then I look at it and think, perhaps I do need to see a doctor. Yes, when I'd done the Crystal Bible, we were able to do an index, but we couldn't do all the conditions and all the possible crystals to heal. So I wanted to do crystal prescriptions, and fortunately O-Books wanted to do a similar thing. And so I started out with what was really a basic first aid book. You could look it up, you know, I've got a headache, what do I use? And you'd have half a dozen choices so that you could find the right one for you. Now that was fine until more crystals came along, and there's been so many new crystals in the last few years. So I did another one with more of the new crystals. But then I realised that there were a lot of people that were electrosensitive like I was. So volume 3 really came out of me needing to tell people, share with people, all the things that I discovered. First of all, that EMS did to you, you know, what the symptoms were if you were sensitive. So that book, the introduction got very much bigger than the introduction to the first two, because I was looking at that and then sharing all the side effects, what crystals could you use. And then when we got to 4, I realised that in my workshops I was talking about quite a few chakras that people weren't familiar with, higher vibration chakras. So there instantly was another half and half book. Half of it was what they were, half of it was the crystals you would use. And then the other thing that was coming up constantly was space clearing and the ancestral work and the karmic work and soul retrieval and all of those things that then ended up as 5 and 6 because there was too much to fit into one book. You know, it's like as soon as you start writing, examples come, new situations come up that you think, oh, I need to include that. No, there's a whole new raft of crystals suddenly arrived. These Celtic healers, we went up a crystal mountain. We went up a mountain having heard that there were such things as crystals on this mountain. What we didn't realise was it was actually a crystal mountain, and there was an old mine. And we picked all these up, and then we found that they were incredibly helpful for ancestral healing and karmic healing. And I was being sent all the time new crystals with the same. It was as though something said ancestral healing is essential, karmic healing is essential. And I've always felt if we're going to shift ages, you know, as an astrologer, I'm very aware we're going from Pisces to Aquarius, and it's a different energy. We can't take the past with us. And we need our souls to be healed and to be whole before we can make a vibrational shift. It's always very difficult to find words that actually explain what I mean by that. I can feel if I go to a higher vibration, and I know it's not a judgmental term, but if you talk about higher and lower vibrations, people go, oh, low, oh, no. But it's not, it's earthy. Well, ancestral, anything that comes from the ancestors comes into ancestral healing. And one of the things that is being talked about quite a lot now, which has been very helpful because a few years back nobody talked about it, is the fact that if your ancestors had traumas 3, 4, 10 generations back, that actually is carried forward. The effect can be carried forward is carried forward physically in the same way that a disease could be transmitted. But the thing that they are realising now, and we've been working with quite a long time in the crystal world, is that you can change that. So ancestral healing means that if you're experiencing symptoms of trauma, dreams, anxiety attacks, fear, all the things that actually have no relevance to what you yourself have experienced in your present life, that could well be coming from ancestral trauma. A lot of the work obviously was done with survivors of Jewish concentration camps and their offspring and their offspring's offspring. You know, so we're sort of on third generation now. So it's been realised or recognised as intergenerational trauma. So that's one of the aspects of ancestral. But the other is belief systems that have been passed down, which may not be relevant to you now, but you still might be held with them. Karmic healing is, in a sense, much more personal, because that comes out of the idea that there are other lives, previous lives, and things could have happened to you then, which have carried over into the present. But you don't even have to believe in past lives to believe in karma, because karma simply means the result of something that's happened in the past, whenever that past might be. So it could be 3 weeks ago, could be 3 lifetimes ago. Same crystals will work to help you clear that. And I've used grids and laying crystals on for 45 years to help with that and seen the results. So it's tried and tested.
So is this an example of a grid?
This is a Tree of Life grid, which actually comes out of Jewish Kabbalah. I happen to have this with me for the workshop I'm doing this weekend, so I brought it in. And you can use the Tree of Life to send healing back down the ancestral line. But then what you do is you send it forward out into the future so that future generations can benefit as well. And I'll just show you really quickly. If we use something like this, this is Eye of the Storm again, which brings calm and peace. These are very small but very potent white agates. And what I found was these cleanse and purify. They clear very quickly for you. This is one to bring in light. And then what we need at the base, if we use another Eye of the Storm, we can anchor it and send the healing. And then this is my absolute, couldn't be without it, favourite crystal. This is Brandenburg Amethyst, which contains the blueprint, the pure energetic blueprint before anything became imprinted either on your physical or emotional, mental, karmic, ancestral energy body. So if we add a Brandenburg to this equation, we're sending this pure energy back to cleanse. And there's other possibilities, but I think what I would do with this grid would then be put some of the Celtic healers on, so that puts more healing through. And you can use this to clear your own karma, you can use it for the family.
So would you sort of set it up as a kind of ritual at home? And
Yes, I would clean all the crystals first. These were cleaned before we started. I would then find somewhere where it wasn't going to be disturbed, so I could leave it. I'd put it on. With some of the grids, you need to connect them up into a pattern. But I find with this one, because there's so many pathways, It's perfect for going back down through the roots of the ancestral tree, and then it brings the energy this way into future generations. And that means that the gifts that the ancestors have gained, I know it sounds weird to say the gifts from being in a traumatic situation, but there are gifts. There's survival skills, there's inner peace, there's all kinds of things that come out of it. And we don't want to wipe those away. We want those to come forward and for future generations to be able to use the benefits of that. So this is a very simple grid that works very powerfully. And then after a few days or weeks, you just take it down. Spray where it's been. I usually use, again, a clearing. So I would probably clear the centre or put this in a spray and spray it. And that's completed. In that situation, I'd do it the other way around. I'd find the crystal that felt right, and I would either see what you felt immediately attracted to, or I'd douse. And a really interesting, really quick way that you can do without people looking at you and thinking, what are they doing, is to put your finger and thumb together and then loop the other finger and thumb through, so that you then pull, and if it holds, that means that's the right crystal for you. So you then take the crystal home and you work with it, and then you see if you feel better. And if you do, that sort of confirms that it's the right crystal. But the thing that I've become more and more aware of is people will pick up a book and look up what it's supposed to do, and then they don't expect it to do anything else. Whereas I keep trying to say, this does this, and you know, there's a huge and. Crystals can do all sorts of things that I'm still discovering. Things that I've worked with for 35, 40 years, I'm finding new, because we're evolving and the crystals are evolving. So the other way to do it, of course, the easy way, if you know where it's coming from and if you know what the effect is, pick up crystal prescriptions, look in crystal prescriptions, look up your symptom, and then check which crystals are on there and douse those. And I've given a lot of early on examples of how ancestral and karmic trauma can affect us. And you know, some of it, it's not what you would normally expect. You know, you can expect insomnia and headaches, but some of them are much more subtle physiological effects or effects in your life. If everything's going wrong in your life, I reckon if everything's going wrong in your life, you need a crystal. And I've just laid out a Eye of the Storm grid here, just to keep things nice and calm. And that's what you do. You put that in the corner while you look at what's the right crystal for this situation. But you know, you can use them every day. I mean, Mercury's retrograde at the moment. I have my Eye of the Storm to keep things calm. You might have a period when you need a lot more energy, and crystals will do that for you. And again, one of the crystal prescriptions will give you lots of possibilities, and you can pep yourself up with them. They do everything. They calm you down, they pep you up, and they protect you, and they also bring abundance. That's the other very important aspect. Absolutely not. It can be a very expensive habit. There's beautiful gemstones, wonderful gemstones, faceted, lovely. I wouldn't carry them about with me. And I actually very rarely recommend any pure gemstones. And if I do, I usually say use them in their raw state. Because these lumps of rock, as somebody once described them, that we have here, are just as potent, just as powerful. And so you can have a very basic kit, and in Crystal Prescriptions 1, I sort of gave a basic first aid kit that you can carry with you that will cover half a dozen crystals or so, will cover virtually every first aid situation you need. So no, it doesn't have to be, it can be, because a lot of the new ones are very expensive, but pictures work just as well. That's one of the things I've found. Yes, and if you treat them well, they will treat you well. I mean, the first thing to do is keep them clean. They absorb so much, and if they're solid, then you can put them under the tap and put them out in the sun. I don't particularly like tap water, but you know, if the worst comes to the worst, it's better to do tap water than not. Spring water is ideal. Put them in the sea. Get them clean. Get them as fully charged as you can, and then just be kind to them. And one of the questions that I'm continually asked, you can tell probably by the way I say it about how I feel about this question, is, oh, I've chipped my crystal, I've broken my crystal, oh, have I got to throw it away? And the answer is no, absolutely not. A chipped crystal will work just as well. It'll probably work harder because it knows what it feels like to be knocked. I've glued crystals back together very successfully. But I do try and keep them in bags. I mean, this Brandenburg of mine is certainly not the most pretty Brandenburg I've ever had. I've had some stunning ones, but this one has a few little knocks and a few cracks and crevices, but it works incredibly hard and it never leaves my side. This goes everywhere with me. And the other things that, in terms of your own self-care, if you're around mobile phones, EMFs, anyway, of any kind, shungite, wear shungite, have shungite about your person, that will protect you. If you're going somewhere that's not necessarily totally dangerous, but where the energies are not good, take something like the Eye of the Storm, or even an amethyst or a smoky quartz. You can get them in any crystal shop. They will protect you. So it's a two-way process. You look after your crystals, they look after you, and they soon become friends. Where you can find me is www.judyhall.co.uk, and on there is my crystal community, which is a subscription service. But it's got a huge amount about new crystals, various methods of using them, and just about everything you need to know. Simply because it takes so long to get a book out that I wanted to cover that. I've written 2 books this year. I did not intend to do it this way, but it's how publishing works. So I've written a big one on crystal grids and an even bigger one on how to use your crystals. The Crystal Companion will have all the new crystals, but it will also have ways of using them. And of course, there's always something new to say, but I think a lot of it will filter through now through the website or through the Facebook pages. I've got Crystal Judy Hall Facebook, Crystal Bible Facebook, and there is within the members community a closed Facebook page where all these incredibly lovely people who've been using crystals just as long as me, share their expertise as well. So we've got a real community going, and I love that sense of everybody's benefiting, everybody's contributing, because that's what I wanted when I started the community. I didn't want any to be the guru. I've never wanted to be the guru. I've always wanted to be someone who shares and who also receives from other people.
Brilliant.
And where you can find me tends to be here. This is the College of Psychic Studies. Very, very old building. It's been here since 1903 as a college for psychic studies, and I'm really fortunate that I do 2 workshops a term for them. So being in London, it's very accessible. And apart from that, I'm in Holland in October. I'm in Belfast in November, and all parts of the UK, which are all on my website. So I'm everywhere.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure.